was halfway through a cold beer and a mindless crime show rerun, trying to decompress from a brutal week as a military police captain, when the pounding started. It wasn't a neighborly knock, it was sharp, frantic, and way too loud for 2 in the morning. My military training took over instantly. Nothing good happens after midnight. I grabbed the hoodie, pulled the door open just a crack, and my stomach immediately clenched. It was my sister, Savannah, swaying on her feet, hair matted to her face, one eye swollen nearly shut, clutching her 8-year-old daughter, Khloe, tight to her chest. Khloe, who uses a wheelchair, was silent, gripping the armrests so hard her knuckles were white. Savannah's knees buckled as I yanked the door wide. I caught her weight, angling Khloe's chair in with my foot, kicking the door shut to block out whatever evil she had fled. Savannah collapsed against me with a groan, clutching her ribs. Her shirt was torn, and I didn't need a medic badge to know she was badly hurt. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was violence. Before I could even lay Savannah on the couch, my phone buzzed on the counter. A text from my own mother, Patricia Blake, the woman who had drilled "family comes first" into us like a military code. The message read, "Don't save her. She's a traitor." I stared at the screen, the ultimate act of betrayal laid bare in 7 careless words. My mother had just told me to let my injured sister and disabled niece fend for themselves. The fatigue of the week vanished, replaced by a cold, searing rage. I flipped the phone face down. Patricia was the last person I'd be calling. Savannah was safe now. She was leaning against the couch cushions, shivering under a blanket, her breath shallow. Khloe, still silent, clutched a silver necklace, an old heirloom from our grandmother, like a talisman. I crouched down, checking Khloe first. She shook her head, her eyes wide, darting toward her mom. "Don't call Mom," Savannah rasped, her voice paper-thin. "Not a problem," I assured her. I went straight for the field first aid kit I kept under the sink, a habit from years in the MP Corps. The nasty purple bruise blooming over Savannah's ribs needed more than just a bandage. It needed a hospital. "This needs a real doctor," I insisted. "Please, don't send me back," she murmured, closing her eyes. Back where? The question hung heavy in the air. I made the decision right then. I hit 911. "My sister just showed up at my apartment," I told the dispatcher, keeping my voice level. "She's hurt badly. I think it's domestic violence." As I waited for the ambulance, I sat beside Khloe. Her wheelchair was old, cheap, and poorly maintained. The left brake was visibly failing. This was the poverty of the abused. When the paramedics and an officer arrived, I stepped aside. Savannah was barely able to speak. As they loaded her onto the stretcher, Khloe broke her silence. "Grandma was there," she whispered, gripping the necklace. "She told me not to talk." The officer's eyes flicked to me. This was instantly more complicated than simple domestic violence. This was a family conspiracy. I locked my apartment door and wheeled Khloe toward the ambulance. As we moved, the gravity of the situation sank in. My sister, Savannah, was protecting the man who hurt her, and my mother was covering for him. This wasn't just a rescue mission. It was a war against my own blood, fought for an innocent, silent child. They think their cheap violence and their family loyalty can hide the truth. They don't know that my uniform doesn't stop protecting people at the base gate. Comment MP Justice now if you believe Captain Maddie Cole needs to bring the full weight of the law down on her family. The battlefield is now the ER. The sterile brightness of the ER did nothing to cut through the mounting tension. The doctor confirmed the injuries. 2 cracked ribs and bruising consistent with severe blunt force trauma. Savannah had been badly beaten. The doctor asked if she wanted to file a report, but Savannah only shook her head. Not yet. The wall of silence between us was palpable, fueled by fear, misplaced loyalty, or both. As the nurse hooked Savannah up to an IV, I shifted my chair close to the bed, dropping my voice to an absolute whisper. "You need to tell me everything, now." Savannah's eyes flicked to Khloe, who sat silently gripping her necklace, and then back to me. "It started months ago," she confessed. "Kyle has been taking Khloe's disability checks. He says it's for the household, but it's not. He spends it on himself. Trips, tools. Mom knows." That last part hit me like a cold slap. Mom knows? Savannah's jaw tightened. She says I should be grateful he hasn't left yet. Last night, I told him I wanted Khloe's money in a separate account. He got angry. He shoved me into the counter, and I felt something snap. Her voice dropped to a barely audible rasp. Mom was sitting right there, drinking her tea. She told me to stop making a scene. When I grabbed Khloe's wheelchair to leave, Mom actually blocked the door. She said if I walked out, I was on my own. No help, no money, no family. The crime wasn't just Kyle's violence, it was Patricia's active complicity. My own mother had watched her daughter get assaulted and then actively imprisoned her to protect a financial arrangement. Khloe's vulnerability was the key to their wealth. "Grandma said it was for the family," Khloe's small voice piped up from her chair, confirming the manipulation. The cold rage that had started in my apartment intensified, hardening into a precise, professional focus. This was no longer just a family spat. It was felony exploitation of a disabled child. Savannah confirmed she had proof, bank statements, but the account was in Kyle's name, co-signed by Patricia. My name was nowhere on it. That was all the authorization I needed. "You are going to give me permission to access whatever you can," I told her, pulling out a standard power of attorney template I kept for emergencies. "We are not playing nice about this anymore." Her signature, shaky but legible, was the first step on the warpath. Stepping out into the hallway, I immediately called my contact on base, Staff Sergeant Hill. I needed to know the legal boundaries of a military police officer digging into a civilian VA-tied financial scheme. Hill confirmed my fear. Get it wrong, and I would be in hot water. Let a lawyer run point, he advised. I already knew the lawyer, Deborah Langley, who specialized in chewing up and spitting out messy cases. Back inside, working on my laptop using slow hospital Wi-Fi, I located the bank account using Khloe's VA benefit routing number. The transactions scrolled across the screen like a casualty report. Vegas resorts, Florida condo deposits, high-end sporting goods, not 1 cent for Khloe's care. I showed Savannah the screen. This is where Khloe's money went. Her eyes, full but dry, confirmed the depth of the betrayal. As I saved and double encrypted the files, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. A text. "You stick your nose in, you'll lose your stripes." Savannah flinched. Kyle. I screenshotted the threat, a valuable piece of evidence. "Let him," I said, deleting the original message. "Means easier to handle than clever." The lines of battle were drawn. The enemy was confirmed. Kyle the abuser, and Patricia the accomplice. They think a cheap threat can stop an MP captain. They just pushed me to go nuclear. Comment "Go nuclear" if you think Kyle's fraudulent VA claims are the key to bringing down the entire family scheme. We're calling the lawyers next. The sun was barely up when I pulled into my base parking spot, but the relative quiet of the base housing was immediately shattered. Before I could even take my boots off, there was a knock. Kyle Merrick, wearing a clean shirt and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I opened the door just enough to block him. "You're not supposed to be here," I stated flatly. He tried to play the role of the reasonable man, claiming Savannah was the one with the problems, attempting to charm and then intimidate. "You've got a career you care about," he threatened, his voice dropping. "Be a shame if your heard you were misusing your position." That was the crack I needed. I slowly lifted my phone, showing the visible red recording dot. The smirk vanished. "Keep talking, Kyle." He quickly retreated, his face a mask of thwarted malice. I immediately locked the door and transferred the audio, proof of intimidation and harassment, to my encrypted drive. The man was used to getting his way by pushing until people folded. He'd just run into a wall of military discipline. I spent the next hour meticulously organizing the evidence: bank records, threatening texts, and the new audio recording. My military police training made me meticulous. A sloppy file is worse than no file at all. I then headed to the hospital. The lobby was buzzing, and I spotted Deborah Langley, the attorney, already waiting. She'd pulled court records. Kyle had 2 prior domestic disturbance calls, both dropped, with Patricia Blake acting as his character witness. The pattern of complicity was undeniable. We walked into Savannah's room, where she was sitting upright, alert but wary. She handed me a freshly stamped summons petition for emergency custody filed by Kyle. He was preemptively claiming she was an unfit mother who had abandoned their home and couldn't provide medical care for Khloe. The audacity was breathtaking. "We have 5 days," Deborah stated, scanning the document, "less if he pushes for an emergency ruling." The game had escalated from a criminal investigation into a high-stakes custody battle, with Khloe as the prize. I set the victim statement forms in front of Savannah. "Fill these out. Every detail you remember about last night and every pattern of abuse. Now." Deborah, meanwhile, reviewed the financial screenshots. "This is gold," she noted. "Not just for custody, but for criminal charges. A judge will have a hard time giving him Khloe if we show he's stealing from her." The enemy, however, was already attacking my flank. A nurse interrupted me with an urgent call. "Captain Cole, I need you in my office at 1400 to discuss a complaint filed against you for abuse of authority." I didn't need to ask who filed it. Patricia was playing dirty, trying to use my own chain of command, CO, to tie my hands. Deborah didn't flinch. "Then we hit back harder," she advised. "I'll get the custody motion filed by noon. You deal with your CO, keep it clean, and don't give them anything they can use." As I left, Savannah handed me the completed forms, her signature firm. "I'm scared, Maddie. He's not going to stop." "That's why we make sure he doesn't get the chance," I vowed. The fight had officially moved to my territory, the military. Kyle and Patricia think they can use the army to intimidate me. They don't know that when a captain is cornered, the first thing she does is call in federal backup. Comment "federal" now if you want to see how Maddie counters the mother's plot and sets up the VA fraud case. My appearance in Captain Raines's office was mandatory but purely procedural. Patricia's complaint, alleging I misused my military police position to access civilian financial records, was a direct assault on my career, designed to force me to back off. Raines, a straight shooter, was waiting for my formal response. I presented a meticulously assembled packet, Savannah's signed power of attorney, timestamps for every legally accessed data point, and a sworn statement from Deborah Langley confirming she directed most of the collection. The file was clean, airtight, and documented my actions were within legal civilian channels. Rains quickly scanned the paperwork. "You've covered yourself well," he acknowledged, clearing me of misconduct. One front of the war was closed. But the most devastating weapon was being prepared elsewhere. While Savannah and I were in the hospital, Deborah had been digging into Kyle's background. Her phone call to her VA contact confirmed a game-changing suspicion. Kyle's VA benefits paperwork did not match his service record. He was claiming a disability rating for an injury sustained during a deployment he had never been on. This wasn't just spousal theft, this was federal fraud. I immediately called Staff Sergeant Hill, giving him the basics. Hill, understanding the gravity, promised to flag the file for the VA Office of Inspector General, OIG, review. Kyle was no longer facing a simple divorce, he was facing the United States government. The first major confrontation was the emergency custody hearing the following morning. In the courtroom, Kyle sat across the aisle, dressed in a suit, with Patricia beside him, exuding false respectability. Kyle's attorney painted Savannah as an unfit, abandoning mother. Deborah countered with surgical precision. She submitted the medical reports and photographs of Savannah's bruises, establishing that Savannah escaped a violent assault. Then came the financial evidence, the annotated bank statements proving Kyle and Patricia co-managed and misappropriated Khloe's VA benefits for luxury items, the Vegas trips, the condos. The judge's eyebrows twitched as he reviewed the evidence. Finally, Deborah submitted my audio recording of Kyle's threat to me, showing his pattern of intimidation. Patricia, seeing the walls closing in, tried to play the concerned grandmother, but her defense crumbled when the judge asked her to respond to the allegations. She was silent. The judge, seeing the clear pattern of financial exploitation and abuse, did not waste time. He issued an interim order that was a staggering victory. Temporary full custody to Savannah with 0 visitation for Kyle, and all benefit funds immediately redirected to an account solely managed by Savannah. Kyle's jaw went slack. Patricia stared straight ahead, realizing they had lost the battle for control. Outside the courtroom, Savannah let out a shaky breath, realizing they had successfully cut off the abusers from the money and the child. But the battle wasn't over. As we drove away, my phone buzzed with another anonymous threat. "Drop it, Captain, or the Army's going to think you've gone rogue." They were cornered and thrashing, but they were still trying to fight. I immediately forwarded the call log to Hill. The victory in court was secure, but the final, devastating federal case was just beginning. Kyle and Patricia lost the child and the money in state court. Now, the OIG is about to drop the hammer on the federal fraud charge that could cost Kyle his freedom and drag Patricia down as a co-conspirator. Comment "hammer down" if you're ready for the final, absolute triumph. The final custody hearing landed on a rainy Thursday. Savannah, resolute and armed with weeks of evidence, walked into the courtroom beside me. Kyle sat at the defendant's table, alone, with Patricia at his side, looking like the picture of conservative respectability. Her absence from the witness stand in previous hearings had spoken volumes. She wouldn't risk perjury to save her son-in-law. Deborah Langley, our attorney, wasted no time. She built the closing argument from the ground up, The medical records of assault, the photographic proof of injury, the consistent pattern of financial exploitation, and the VA fraud, now officially confirmed as fabricated and under federal investigation. Patricia shifted uneasily as Deborah detailed the extent of the financial betrayal, linking the benefit checks intended for Khloe's care directly to luxury purchases for Kyle. When the judge directly asked Patricia if she wished to testify, she decisively declined. That silence was the final, non-verbal confession that sealed their fate. Savannah, in her final statement, spoke without shaking. "I want my daughter to grow up safe, knowing she doesn't have to be afraid of the people who are supposed to protect her." The judge leaned back, reviewing the file heavy with evidence. The gavel hit the block with a sharp, final sound. Effective immediately, Mrs. Merrick is granted full physical and legal custody of Khloe Merrick. Mr. Merrick's visitation is revoked until further order of the court. Miss Blake's contact with the child is limited to supervised visitation. The verdict was absolute. Not only did Savannah win the child, but the judge ordered that all benefit funds be administered solely by Savannah, effectively cutting off Kyle and Patricia from Khloe's money forever. The final sting: the judge formally referred the misuse of said benefits to the appropriate federal authorities. Kyle's face went slack, the forced confidence gone, replaced by hollow shock. Patricia didn't look at him. She kept her eyes fixed ahead, defeated. As we walked out of the courtroom, Savannah let out a breath she'd been holding for weeks. The first step toward freedom was complete. The ultimate justice, however, came from the federal investigation. Within days, the VA investigator officially confirmed that Kyle was losing his benefits. The federal fraud was on the table, and the case was being kicked to the U.S. Attorney's Office for possible criminal charges. Kyle's face went slack, the forced confidence gone, replaced by hollow shock. Patricia didn't look at him. She kept her eyes fixed ahead, defeated. As we walked out of the courtroom, Savannah let out a breath she'd been holding for weeks. The first step toward freedom was complete. The ultimate justice, however, came from the federal investigation. Within days, the VA investigator officially confirmed that Kyle was losing his benefits. The federal fraud was on the table, and the case was being kicked to the U.S. Attorney's Office for possible criminal charges. Kyle was now facing the potential loss of his freedom, not just his family's money. Patricia, the orchestrator, was also contacted by federal agents. The empire they had built on Khloe's disability was crumbling. A week later, I stood on the parade field back at the base. My transfer to the training command had been approved. My career was safe. The inquiry based on Patricia's complaint had been cleared, no misconduct found. I looked at the new path ahead. My phone buzzed with a photo from Savannah. Khloe, in the backyard of their new, safe townhouse, her wheelchair parked in the grass, arms raised in a victory pose. Savannah wrote, "She says this is her safe spot." I realized then that my mission as a captain, as a sister, was complete. Justice wasn't just about the verdict. It was about the safety and the silence that followed. They were free. I closed my fingers around the silver heirloom necklace Savannah had insisted I keep. This wasn't a one-time order. It was a permanent vow. This is the end of the fight, but the lesson lasts forever. Family isn't determined by blood. It's determined by loyalty. If you believe Captain Maddie Cole upheld her duty to the highest standard, comment "family loyalty" and hit subscribe to join the fight for those who can't fight for themselves.